This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, so we'll call this meeting to orders. Thursday, January 19th, 2023 meeting of the Easthampton Energy Advisory Committee. I am Jamie Paquette, the chair of the committee, joined by members Connie Dawson, John Pepe, as well as Cassie Traggart, the City Conservation Commission agent.
Yeah.
Conservation Commission agent, thank you. All right, our first order of business. Everybody's ready? All good over there?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you all good?
Yeah.
Yes.
I downloaded them, realized it was a PDF. You can't type into a PDF the agenda. So I
right.
just put it up on Google Docs. I think
Okay.
something.
That's fine. Yeah, the agenda has not changed much. And, we need some updating. But we do have minutes from last time to approve in the December 5th meeting. A chance to review those. We have a motion to approve the minutes from the December 5th meeting. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
There's a couple things that I think on the discussion about the climate plan that are not quite what I recall being said, but I don't think they're weighty enough to bother. I just want to.
I'm sure that that's true.
It's confusing. It was confusing and it's not easy to do.
I would be more than happy to make changes if there are things that, I do the best I can, but
No, you do.
I
You do a good
decided
job.
not to listen to it all and type, which is what I did. I don't have the time to do that.
No.
Listen to what do you have?
The recording.
Old that. Is that what you
Yeah,
were
I
working
didn't.
with?
Well, I didn't last time.
Okay.
It takes.
Okay.
You can only imagine.
Okay. Would you like to
Anyway,
hold off? Would you have to wait and?
No, I don't think it's significant or going to have repercussions or whatever. So let's just. I move that we approve the minutes. Just wanted to let you know that
Okay.
maybe I'll try to clarify later some things that were said.
We can rectify that in this meeting, perhaps. Connie, would you like to second that?
Oh yes, I would love to second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Minutes are approved. And we will address any shortcomings or changes that be needed there. There are no members of the public here to speak at the moment, so we will move past that. All right, committee updates. We did talk a little bit last time about meetings and when we want to do them. Trying to accommodate different members. We are now down to 3 members, all seated here, and I think we have a little more flexibility time-wise and date-wise, generally speaking. So I'm going to move that, well, not really a motion per se, but like propose that we go back to a first Monday of the month meeting. That work for you? And are you okay with the 5:30 start time versus like 6 o'clock? Or even, I could even do 5 o'clock potentially if you all prefer.
I don't care.
5 is probably better because then it's not right in the middle of the dinner hour. Kind of not quite as much in the middle of dinner
Sure.
hour.
That works for me. Yeah, earlier.
Yeah,
better.
earlier you're
Then
out of
still
here. Yeah.
already anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's plan, because if I can get that to the city clerk, it's better for them to just know when our
Yes.
meetings are going to be.
And then
So we'll plan for the next meeting after this to be the first Monday in March. That works for me. I don't think we need to jam one in 2 weeks from now. So that would be March. Calendars activate. So
6th.
March 6th, followed by April 3rd
I find
at 5 p.m.
Okay.
So we'll do 5 Mondays at 5 p.m. We get some other members and they have an issue with that, they're not going to be allowed to join.
It'll also be helpful for prospective members. It'll be helpful for them to know whether there's a regular meeting time
True.
they can assess.
Yep. All right, so good. Mondays at 5. All right, so that'll be March 6th, April 3rd. The next couple, I'll let the city clerk know about that. I'll also check with the city clerk on any outstanding minutes that we might have. But again, I don't know what's been submitted.
Well, the last meeting, I said that I knew that we hadn't accepted quite a few because we didn't have a quorum one time.
Right.
And you did you submit? Because anything that you can submit everything now. Because we
Right.
accepted them last time.
I have not submitted them, so I guess we
Oh.
should work out whether you're gonna submit them once
Oh,
you do that,
if you
or
want
whether I
me
do
to,
it.
I'd be happy to. Do you want me, I could just send her an email with like the batch
That'd
that
be
I've
great.
done and say, I don't know where you are, but here, and then she'll know. That's the simplest thing to do.
That's fine, that'd be good.
And I'd be happy to do that each time, just send them to her.
I think,
That's,
yeah, from a
no, wait,
process
and that
standpoint,
would be, who do I send them to?
you can just send it, you send it to, I think just the agendas,
My only printed one I have is
at
Oh.
easthamptonma.gov. If you send it to the agendas, email, that's who deals with agendas.
Is it the city clerk?
It's the city clerk's office, yeah, they share,
Keep that guy.
they share that email address,
But
easthamptonma.gov,
Oh, it's just, okay.
right, easthamptonma.gov is that, yeah.
Yes, yeah,
So agendas at
okay.
that, you can send it there. Somebody will, in the city clerk's office will see it and know that
Yeah,
it's
they'll
a
figure
shared,
it out.
it's a shared email for them, yeah. All right. So, basic order to process things taken care of. All right, so member update, we are down to 3
Yeah.
of us, we have a couple openings now.
I have just a very brief thought that, and I wish I'd gotten more details, I didn't think about it till later. I had a meeting with Connie and Homar about idling, which I'll tell you guys about later,
Okay.
but they told me that they had been at a meeting, and I don't know why I didn't ask them about some other meeting that had been called, and at that meeting, they'd been talking about starting a sustainability committee, and then they realized, wait a minute, we already have an energy advisory committee, why would we then start a sustainability committee?
Right.
So apparently whoever was at that meeting, they thought that some of those people might be interested in joining this committee. And I said that I thought it made tremendous sense to change the name to energy and sustainability instead of just energy. So anyway, I'll let them do whatever they're doing, but I just want to let you guys know, I could do a call or something.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard nothing from anybody about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be great. I mean, that's another way, another hook to bring some people
Yeah,
on
Yeah,
board.
she said, because Connie said she thought that some of those people would be interested, and so anyway.
All right. Well, as I mentioned
We'll see.
to John recently, I've been slow, and I haven't actually posted anything on the Facebook group, and I want to do that and then share it to some of the city things. So now, especially that we're down to 3, a little more. I wouldn't say urgent, but like be nice to get a new person or two involved. Won't need to belabor that any further. Update on aggregation is that I don't really have any updates. I reached back out to Lindsay at the end of last week to see if any progress had been made, and she was out of the office, and then it was the long weekend, and I haven't heard from her this week, and I didn't have a chance to follow up yet. So I'll follow up again with her next week, see if the solicitors had a chance to actually review, provide comments. I did also send, I gave her the comments that Good Energy provided about who their lawyer was, maybe getting them together to talk through stuff if need be.
So you don't even know if the two lawyers have.
They have definitely not spoken yet. I was
Okay.
waiting to see if the solicitor was going to have any specific comments on
Okay.
their red lines to the red lines. So anyway, so that's kind of
Okay,
a non-update update
okay.
for that. So nothing further there. So let's move on to the climate action plan. It says discuss draft RFP. Obviously, it's no longer a draft. Hasn't been sent out, but had a little more chance to review the final version that got sent out. Talk through a little bit of that. And so, Cassie, maybe just why don't you give us an update real quick on where that is from the city's standpoint.
Yeah, so since the last meeting,
I was looking for my copy, I didn't
I
realize
can grab
actually.
another copy if you need one.
No, I don't, it's just that I figured out what I've done with this. I put it away.
Well, so since the last meeting, I again really appreciate the comments. It was like incredibly helpful, and I feel like we made a lot of important changes to it. The big 3 was 1, coming away from a specified homeowner's guide, because we were thinking like, what is the value of this printed document that was originally proposed, and that it likely would become outdated quite quickly. But we weren't able to land on anything that we thought would be a good alternative, because the idea of trying to targetedly reach out to the public seems like still something that people wanted to have in there. But so what we did was in the scope change the language, so it's like they need to figure that out. They need to incorporate that in their outreach and figure out what would be the best way to be directly helpful to residents. And that should culminate in some kind of residence guide, is what we're calling it. But it's not necessarily going to be a written thing. It could be a website. It could be, you know, I don't know. Like it could be a lot of different things. And talking to Weston and Sampson, that was what we wanted to get across. Like, we need creativity. We need it to be something that's going to be helpful. So that was a big change that I meant to incorporate in there, and I hopefully did. 2 was the resiliency aspect of it. So it was previously titled the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan, but then based off of discussions at the meeting and looking through what's already been done, it was determined that that might be too broad of a scope and not something that necessarily needed to be done yet, considering past things that the city has done through the Green Infrastructure Plan, Master Plan, and the NVP Preparedness Final Summary Report. And there's kind of ongoing resiliency actions being taken focused in infrastructure. And so we shifted the language to kind of more orient around doing an evaluation of what our current understanding is of our resiliency needs and trying to identify what the gaps are and whether or not a separate resiliency plan is necessary, so they can give us guidance on what we need, and that would be incorporated in their final report. Like, hey, you also need to do an updated resiliency. You should do a separate one, or update this, or something. But an evaluation of what has already been done by the city as a whole, climate-wise, but then also specifically about resiliency. And then the third thing was,
can I just interject? I have a question about that. So if they see a gap in terms of what they review, do we want them to look into that area for us?
I think that it sounds like, I think that, well, because there's always the thing of the budget to consider, and I don't know how that would potentially change the budget if we did that later on the path. I tried to leave it worded in such a way that like there is a little wiggle room about stuff and what they're gonna do, but it seems unlikely that they would be able to take on filling those gaps. I guess it depends how big the gaps are. What their findings are.
Well, also the way you've written it, it sounds like the first thing that will happen is the contractor will sit down and review what the city's done. They may look at this list and say, I don't see whatever. It looked like that this wasn't ever done or reviewed or whatever, almost initially.
Right.
So that might be the point where the decision would be made.
Sure.
Well, you've asked them for, at least in their proposal, which we're waiting for them to produce at some point, a task-by-task budget.
Yeah.
And so if they can take what we've laid out and break it up meaningful chunks that they can assign dollar figures to, it'll make it a little easier at that point for us to say, well, this is what we were thinking of, this is what they're proposing to do, this is better than we thought, let's really do that. Or this was, the more we think about it, this piece is gonna cost us $20,000 and we're not sure if it's worth it. So maybe, this seems like an open-ended kind of consulting relationship with Weston Sampson, and there could be an agreed upon change in scope later. No?
Yeah. What's that? Oh, could you unlock it? Sorry. Thank you. Sorry.
Just say they could possible that the more we get into this and start uncovering stuff and they're evaluating, and if there is another step that they can take, it's possible we drop something, the city decides to drop something else that was in their budget as a defined task that has so many dollars that's associated with it, and switch something else in.
Okay.
And what was the third thing?
And then the third thing, which I'll come back to the proposal in a second, but the third thing was that there was an interesting element in there that I had added in that I wasn't so sure about, but it was talking about how to best approach environmental justice communities. Certainly already and still, there is a focus on reaching and hearing from the environmental justice communities that exist within Easthampton. But something I borrowed from another RFP was trying to investigate what other environmental justice communities outside of Easthampton regularly enter and access Easthampton either for work or whatever. That was from the Longmeadow plan or East Longmeadow plan, I think, which, you know, it might make more sense for that community to take that approach. And so I changed it based off y'all's recommendation to investigate if that is something that should be pursued further. Don't say you definitely have to do this. Like, figure out who is coming in from outside. But let's start to take a look at it at first, and then we can reevaluate if we need to do that. But that was one particular, is trying to make it more optional, because it's not clear that it would even be super valuable for, or I don't even know if I want to say valuable, but if it would be like productive. That's the word. So I reworked it to be more reflective of that kind of shift and goal there. Because it absolutely want to focus on environmental justice communities, but we have them in our community. So I don't know what the map is like on East Longmeadow.
And that part is still part of it. I mean, I've
Yes.
seen a number of references to, proposed measures to address carbon reduction has to look at the particular effects that it might have on low-income populations.
Right.
Environmental justice communities.
Yep.
Still there.
Yeah, it needs to be.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
So I incorporated all those changes and sent you guys that new version. And then Jeff and I continued our discussions with Weston and Sampson. And I did, not going back, but we talked to them about a proposal, which I received one.
You already did?
I did receive one last week, but just on Thursday or was this Monday I received it? Anyways,
Yeah.
there are still questions and concerns around going with Weston and Sampson, not doing the RFP process, which would be where we take this scope and send it out and try to get a bunch of responses back. The
Right.
main reasoning is, well, twofold. One, we checked with the procurement officer, and their understanding is because it's a planning plan, you don't need to go to RFP process. Those rules that sometimes apply, like you have to go through the RFP process if it would be to build something,
Right.
those don't apply here. But he advised that the RFP process can take 6 to 8 weeks for that portion of sending it out and giving people enough time to respond and
Right.
craft a proposal, and then to weed through them and choose one, then another 6 to 8 weeks to go through the contracting process and choose one and figure all that out. And so they were looking at like a 3-4 month process overall. And there's a sense of urgency to get this started because the money's coming down the pipe more.
How did we end up, did Jeff know them? How is it that wasn't an
I worked with them on the 604B water quality grant that I worked on,
okay.
which was just a grant application. It's very short, but they were really helpful, and I was way behind the 8 ball on the deadline for that one, so they went above and beyond to help me with that. So that put them on the radar, and then I don't know. I think they've been interested in working with Easthampton for a while, but it wasn't like a.
Well, I know that one of the people, when you look at their qualification document, I sure they recognize the person in there.
Okay.
Ted Harvey,
Yeah.
who he was also, I believe, spouse of Megan Harvey. He's an Easthampton resident.
Oh,
He's one of
okay.
the main people on there. I think Megan Harvey works for the city. His wife works for the
Say
city.
his name again, Ed.
Ted
Okay.
Harvey.
Yeah.
His wife works for the city?
Wife works for the city.
Okay.
I
Is
think
that
she's
a
one of
good
the
thing?
public health
Oh, okay.
people for the city, if I'm not mistaken.
The other thing you mentioned.
Anyway.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Well, I want to just focus on that part for a second. What was your question?
Well,
Sorry.
just the discussion you and I had on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Was it May or June of '24 that the projects had to be done or billed for that were funded by the state 50,000
So
grant?
that's the other piece of it.
Is that the date?
The date is that we got the community compact grant for 50,000, and that project this project then as a result needs to be done within 2 years after we accept the money.
Oh,
They were able to schedule out that they could get it done in a year. and they had space for us in their schedule to start right away. Another firm might have to fit us in somewhere, they've already accepted a project they're working on, whatever. So they were able to meet that deadline in advance, of when it needs to be done. So that's the other piece of it, kind of just expanding upon that, is that we pretty much have, the funding is like settled. We have the funding, they said they're gonna be able to do it for that amount of money.
So that actually does sound that there's some time leeway. If it's a plan they can do in a year, and I think generally these things seem to be getting done in years time from processes I've read about in other towns.
Right.
That even with a 3-month RFP process, that time, you don't want to push it too close. It could take over a year to do the plan. Who knows what's going to come up? But it does seem like it's not right up against the, even if you had an RFP, competitive RFP process. But the urgency thing. You're saying.
Well, I mean,
That's
one of my questions is what the urgency outside of the money part, right? The urgency that this sort of came up, like, the urgency to do this from the city is based on what exactly? Is it like the perceived gaps in this other list of documents between all these other things that we've done that we need to do? And sort of what is, from the city's perspective, what is the really? Yeah, we have a scope, and here's what the deliverables that we want to have. But what is sort of the knock-on, like follow-on effect of that? Like where that it was worth coming up with this $150,000 to advance what? Like, exactly what is it exactly the concrete thing that we want to get out of this at the end?
So it's a couple things. One is the climate emergency resolution that the city council passed.
Mm-hmm.
Really lit a fire under it and was like, we need to be serious about this. Where do we even start? We have to have a plan. So that's like a general over and kind of was like a mandate that this is something that the public probably wants us to pursue in a timely manner. And then also there's a lot of funding coming down on the federal level. That's my understanding, is at least it's like we want to put ourselves in a position where we can start. We've already identified what we need to do. We have proof that it makes sense to do these things. We can use what's been identified in this plan to apply for grants to do them, to actually do them. And I don't know how exactly it fits in timing wise. It just seems like that is probably the impetus for the urgency, is that climate emergency resolution kind of started it all, and then this money coming down, and I don't know how it'll change with administrations and things like. I don't really know.
Right.
And so that's my understanding at
And
least.
I think that, from the conversations I've had with the mayor and other people in the city, we're really far behind in the process of figuring out what the city's response is to the fact that we're in a climate crisis. We've known that for quite a while, but we don't have a plan. We've done. People have stepped up and I think orchestrated a lot of really good things, but is it all? Does it all relate well? Is there a gap? What is our plan to deal with the crisis that we are currently facing? And most cities have this plan already
I don't
written.
think that's true. I don't think that's true. I surfed and beaten up the net looking for climate action plans by municipalities.
Well, I'll send you some.
I find them, but there's 365 municipalities in the state of Massachusetts. I would doubt there's 50.
Well,
that are
maybe, but I
completed
think
processes.
Easthampton is a city that would like to be one of that group. That if we're gonna get grants and we're gonna spend money and we're going to do studies, we should do it within some kind of organized fashion why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Well, because we have a plan.
No,
that seems to
that's
be-
the point of this. We agree. That's the point. The
So-
question is, does it need to start now versus 3 months from now? It's
Well,
really-
it should have
That's part
started
of it.
3 years ago.
Sure, but there's also all these other things, right? We've got a green infrastructure master plan. We've got the climate emergency resolution, which is from 2021. There's a municipal vulnerability preparedness final summary. It's sort of like, is this meant to sit over top of all those and unify them in some way? Or, the way I got there's the master plan. I don't know I forget where we are, like maybe updating a master plan for the city. But like, where does this fit into all that, right? It's still, it feels like just like this other sort of tendril going off in one direction. It's like, it's meant to identify gaps and stuff like that, sure, but is it meant to kind of unify all those things? Or what is the unifying piece that sits over top of all this that says, this is the direction that all this stuff is moving in concert and how they all relate to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, and is that something that this can do? Number one. Number two, should it? And number three, is $150,000 enough to do that if that is indeed the intention?
So my understanding is that was the intention. It's like we have done a lot of things, and that's what I tried to like have in the beginning of the plan, is explaining like we've done a lot of things, but we've never made a single concerted effort to this goal. And we want you to evaluate what we've done, but we also want you to tell us now how are we going to reach that goal. Incorporate the things that we've already done and the things that are like already still even in the works right now, and tell us like how to get there. How do we finish electrifying our fleet? Do we just keep going for community grants like piecemeal, or is there a better way to do it faster? Things like that. That's a very zoomed in piece of it. But yeah, that's my understanding, and I hope that comes through in there, because that was part of it, was to try to be this. Let's take all these little things that we've been doing here, there, and wherever, and do it with intention and figure out how to.
I think
Right.
I feel like it does say that climate action plan, prepare a clear, comprehensive, and easily accessible climate action plan, which shall include analysis and recommendation. Find out from everyone, all the different stakeholders, but then somewhere you talk about reviewing all the things already. Is that in this section?
It's probably in the scope of work.
Maybe,
I think.
But do you feel like we need a statement, Jamie, that's more explicit?
I don't know if it needs to be more explicit like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I don't know, just kind of pushing this all around my head. I think it's kind of like it's number one, like what led to this, but then like also what's the thing, like where does this isn't the end, right? When this is done,
Right.
It's sort of like what does it lead to? We don't have a sustainability coordinator. We don't have an energy
plan. But isn't that the
right? But we don't have anybody at the city level to take this and say, okay, this is how we're going to implement it.
But what about the city council and the mayor? If that's what's important to me in this, is that the mayor and the city council have their hand in this. They're aware of it. They're endorsing the idea that it's going out there and what the purpose of it is. So they are to some extent on the hook for implementation, for taking it the next step after this. And to me, it's not something to write in here per se into the
That's not the
proposal.
consultant's problem.
It's the backdrop, and it's what the context for it and who's involved.
Right.
And we've kind of asked this question every time we've talked about this, is that, maybe we can fund it through the electrical aggregation
Well,
program.
that's kind of
That's
what
not
I'm
gonna
getting.
start for
That's
2
what I'm getting
years.
back to, and that's kind of like part of the overall
Or can
vision.
we write a grant to try to get it funded until we can find a way to fund it? But I do think that that's a really key question, because we can get the most fabulous plan in the world written, but if there isn't anyone actually in the city government who is going to be the point person for this.
Mhm. Right, and then
Yeah.
and then also like where what is the funding mechanism for it? And like again, aggregation is something that can play into that. Not even just for a position, right? But if you say, okay, now we need to create a fund of money that's going to be available to implement some of these projects, and we don't want to do an override, right? Can we put something into an aggregation plan that's going to grab a cent of every kilowatt hour or something like that, and go into like a climate emergency resiliency mitigation fund, whatever it might be, that's going to fund all this stuff. And that's not something that has to be in this, but it would be interesting
Sorry.
piece of this at the end. Like, here's your climate action plan, and here's what it's going to take to implement this stuff. Like, I don't know if that's, and again, there's some pieces of that, but so I'm not saying that's a shortcoming of what's been done here, but it's just something for us as an advisory committee and looking at this longer term to think about.
So what I did include in there is every action that they identify, they're gonna make the action plan. And so
Right.
they list out what they need to include for each action is who would be the most logical person to pursue. Is it homeowners? Is it the city? And if in the city, who? Is it DPW? Is it Energy
Okay.
Advisory Committee? Identify that. So that we know we don't have to it's like a directive almost to be like, you can't avoid it. We know who should do this and who should do it.
Right.
And then, obviously the city can decide who ends up actually doing each thing. But, so that piece of it is what I tried to have be in there, so that they can direct us even to a more fine scale like that. But then, my understanding of what this will be is that this final document would help be a guide for the EAC or Energy and Sustainability Advisory Committee or something on what path and things to pursue and be like, okay, we just did this one, what's next? Or what can we keep doing? And then the last piece of it is that the final plan may be what we need as justification to create such a set position of a sustainability coordinator, or will help fund get for the application of a grant to get such a person, or justify to the city councilors why they got to make that in a budget. I don't really know, but it is a good question, and those things are swirling around already of like creating a sustainability coordinator, having me like become that person.
Right.
So
Have you had that conversation outside of this room, this group?
only like very loosely, and it's not, nothing is set.
Yeah.
And so it's not understood yet, but it's certainly something like there is a known and agreed upon need for a sustainability like coordinator person. So, you know, who that's gonna be or how that will shake out is the question.
I think in
obviously.
some cities it's part of the planning department. You know,
I wouldn't be
it's one of the
surprised.
positions,
Yeah.
the planning
Exactly.
department.
And that would make sense to me
It
for it
does,
to be
it
there.
does make sense, yeah.
Right.
I know it can also be like maybe a DPW thing, or I don't know what.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's my thoughts, is that this asks to identify who's gonna use it, who's gonna take the actions. It asks, it can be used as justification for creating a position, and then also maybe like a guide. Maybe we can't put my favorite things. But yeah, that's what my hope is what is coming across in there, because I agree. Like you can't just get a plan and then see you later. Like whenever looks at it again.
did you send this to them to, what's the name, Weston?
Weston and
Yes, it is.
Sampson.
Did they have any comments about it?
Yeah, so we did two things. That's the next piece. So two things. One, we had a meeting with them.
Is that
where
the
we-
proposal?
No, this is it right here.
What do you?
This
That's
is
the
their
qualifications
qualifications piece.
I didn't know if it'd be helpful.
Yeah.
So when you say we, it was you and?
Me and Jeff,
And
Jeff
Jeff.
Bag, had a meeting with Ted and Robin. They're the two people listed there. And basically what we did is I had sent them this scope ahead of time after I met with you guys and had refined it. And we literally just went through the entire thing. And I said to them, this is what this means. This is our intent with this section here. We talked about the resiliency piece. We talked about what am I trying to say? The environmental justice community piece and like that. Maybe we could go farther out, but we don't want this to like eat everything up. We want to see if it's feasible or reasonable. And we talked about the home residence guide, what that would be. We want them to figure out what it would be. That's how we went through it all. And then they came back with this proposal, which I apologize for not sharing ahead of time. It was just wacky all week. But basically, I mean, it's not super long, but it does itemize out how much they did for each task. And then they list out the deliverables. It pretty much mirrors it back at us. I mean, I'm sorry that we're doing
You don't mind sharing that now? Okay.
I don't think so. I
I
don't
was
see
thinking-
why it'd be a problem.
Would it
It's
be-
not been
would
signed,
it be a
it's not
good
done.
idea?
It's not been signed. It's not finalized. The proposal.
What's the problem?
Huh?
What, I missed what you said.
I
Sorry.
just asked if she minded me looking at it, since
Oh.
she hadn't really had a chance to fully review it yet. What do you think about the idea of just before any contract is signed, assuming somebody puts a contract together that incorporates
Absolutely,
these
that would need
things,
to. Yeah.
that they present. If we're not doing an RFP, at least have them come present with the people who they expect to be running the project and being the foot soldiers on the project, or some
You know,
portion of them.
Which
Come here
brings
and
up,
present to the people.
who are those people? I mean, we are not those people.
Well, he's talking about
No,
the
we
people
are-
from the
no, no.
company that's
But
going to be doing
you're
it.
saying
No, I
present.
think we are part of it. We are part
Yeah.
of it. It's the DPW, the planning department. Who else am I leaving out? Obviously, I mean, all the people who run the city, I mean, who are gonna be impacted by the
And
recommendations.
what would the goal of bringing that
The
all of
goal
those
would
people?
be to be able to ask them for clarification about their ideas about how they would implement this, that, or that, or the other thing, and ask more about their experience. And if nothing else,
Absolutely.
either give us a chance to feel warm and cozy about, who's coming on, or if we found some fatal flaws in the discussion, then, maybe you and the mayor would like to know what they are, or
I
would
just
be
think
happy.
that we should confer with people who, like maybe Jeff, maybe the mayor about, I mean, I don't know whether there are reasons why that might get problematic to bring a lot of people to the table deciding whether or not we're gonna hire this company.
It's not gonna be a decision at that meeting, it's a chance for them to present, then they go away, and the mayor and Jeff and you decide whether, ask for the feedback of people who they've asked to be at the
I'm
meeting.
just saying, I don't know enough about the way the city functions to know whether or not that's a good idea. I'm just, you know,
Well,
it might not be.
From my standpoint, like looking at that, the company and like the work that they've done, and like, you know, we reviewed a little bit of this the other day, like, seeing like, you know, they have a good background. They've done a lot of different work across the board. You said you haven't had a good experience with them, but their work is not so energy and like carbon focused. A lot of it, like a lot of their work, they're civil engineers, right? So they do a lot of wastewater, they do a lot of climate, like resiliency is around like water issues and stuff like that. Less so with energy. You know, they have a climate resiliency team leader in place here, Robin, and again, I'm sure, you know, her experience and is impeccable, but with something like this, especially as we're moving away from like a resiliency thing and we're looking more at like your picture infrastructure and like homes and energy and stuff like that, like, you know, is that something that they're equipped to do internally, or do they have to bring on somebody or like, you know, work with somebody else to do that? I mean, a proposal they would do would you know, spell that out a little bit more. But I'd be interested to know more about their.
Yeah, I mean, I thought your questions were interesting, just thinking about, is this given what we're asking for, is this in fact the company that has the perspective to do this? I have no idea. I mean, maybe they just would bring other people in if they didn't feel like they had.
Well, right, so
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think it would be interesting to talk to them about, you know, and again, just for us as a committee, me in my position as the chair of this committee, it's like, you know, we're advisory capacity only, right? We don't have any we can't make any binding resolutions here or anything like that. But at the same time, like, you know, have the opportunity to you know, have those discussions and like, you know, to shape that conversation a little bit. You know, stuff like this can feel a little bit like a fait accompli sometimes, you know, where it's sort of like, oh, this company told us exactly how much it's going to cost. We figured out a way to get that money, and now we're talking to them, and then they're going to get us a proposal and a contract, and that's kind of the end of it. Whereas, you know, I think there is room for more conversation. Again, sort of a bigger picture viewpoint, like from the city council standpoint. You know, they've passed an emergency, climate emergency resolution. Like, okay, so should they have a chance to sit and like, you know, take a look, or like at least like talk to the people that are going to put something together in response to that, and make sure that what they want to see is addressed. What we see as our priorities are addressed.
I guess what is odd about what's going on right now, which I think is going back to what you were saying, is that we're working on this sort of in a vacuum. Like, you know, like the city council isn't involved with it. That, you know, it's like the plan, and we don't even really know how it's going to get implemented once it's developed. It is sort of an odd.
That's part of what the consultant's job is, to help you figure out how you implement it.
Right.
Okay.
Talk to that a little
But
bit.
you know, there's only so much they could say, not being steeped in history and the details of how this city functions and the departments and what the issues here. They're not going to know that much about our particular problems. They're going to say, go in this direction, and these are typical steps you take, and this is the money you might need, and this is how long it'll take. But this isn't going to be a blueprint. We're not going to get a blueprint out of them. They're going to get some pathways. It's kind of like the state plan. I think some pathways to go in. But my concern, if I can go on for one more minute here, in particular when I think about it, is following up on what Jamie was saying, is I guess maybe put it in terms of a question to you. The whole barrier section, I mean, what I see here
The barrier section.
the barrier section of the scope of work. Evaluate the green
Barriers to
barriers
green
and how to
change.
overcome.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. What I see here is that they pretty much, this is not surprising, especially on short notice or whatever, but they kind of spit back what you have in your. I don't see a lot of new thought going in there about substance and how you do the tasks. They pretty much repeated the sections you have for scope of work tasks and whatever, and deliverables. What they added, of course, is they broke it up into dollar figures for each area, and then about how many months it would take, which are, kind of loose and That's what they do, people do. But
Well, that's
I don't
just
see,
but isn't that what you're supposed to do when you
Well,
give when you say this is what's going to cost, you spit back what someone's asked for.
well,
and ask for that
you
explicitly.
reflect what they ask for, but as experts, you wanna tell the client,
Yeah.
this is how best to do that, and we think this is some of the flesh on the bones, how you would do that, and go
I
ahead.
guess
You
I
would
thought
say
they would do
Well,
that once we hired them.
well, I mean, I don't know. I was just saying, speaking as somebody who used to write grants for a living, like, yeah, you always want to repeat the language back that the proposal uses, right? You
Right.
want to show that you understand. But yeah, you do have to go a little bit beyond saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how it answers the things that you said are important to you here.
Can I see what they gave you?
Yeah, you're saying this is just a preliminary thing
got
they
it.
provided as well, right?
That's the proposal as it is. We got it on Monday, so
Right,
we've not signed it or reviewed it much with them yet. So
right. And
We
is the
could
thought
ask them
that-
to flesh that out.
Was the thought? Did you say they were going to be doing a broader proposal?
I don't
or
think
no?
so.
This,
I don't
okay.
think so. I think maybe they could. I don't
Let's
see why
just
not.
think about the barriers, as we started to say, the barriers part, which is a big meat, big substance. I mean, you do a baseline, here's our energy uses in all its different forms and shapes and type sources of energy. The action plan is further down to get us from whatever our carbon usage is to zero by 2050. But the green barriers. I was talking about this before. Barrier doesn't mean anything unless you're thinking about what is it a barrier to? Okay, I guess it's a barrier to getting to zero. What are the barriers to getting to?
Yeah, to people implementing these
Okay.
actions.
So it's all the things we're not doing right now or need to do much more of to reduce our carbon footprint to get it down to zero. So that involves a whole wide range of technologies from the kind of things maybe the Honeywell is doing with the town to improve the efficiency of, buildings and equipment we have, to retrofitting residences, to putting in ground source heat pumps and air pumps, to transportation, changes in transportation with getting people on electric vehicles, getting bus fleets and whatever, all those kind of things. So it's about technology, and it's about economics, it's about a regulatory environment around all those things, and the initiatives that the federal and state government is putting behind it. That's a big area of expertise. I mean, that's a big area of expertise, and it's very complicated stuff. And I'm just worried how they're gonna, provide answers. I'd like to look more at the resumes of the people they put on there, but given their focus up until now, I think I read on their website that it was 2018 or somewhere around there, they decided to create a new area of focus in the company around sustainability and energy stuff and climate. We've looked at some of their experience resume and projects they've worked with. I mean, West Hampton was infrastructure for the most part. I can't remember so much about Cambridge, but I've really seen there's Andover that they're getting started on, and there was another one was mentioned. I don't see a lot there, that's all. And if you guys are convinced that they have it, then good. I mean, then maybe they'll be able to do it. But that's one of the reasons to have them come and talk, is to be convincing about that this isn't going to be $150,000. That is not going to really get us what we want, because you guys are cutting your teeth on this right now.
Yeah, I agree. I would hope that none of this is to say I trust you all and Jeff, and the work that you all do is really good. And again, just not knowing that much about them until looking at this, I do think that there can be some advantage to doing a little more diligence at the beginning, to just again have a few more sets of eyes, people asking questions, and being able to see, dig into this a little bit more. What is this going to look like? What is this process going to do? If possible, whether we need to, we kind of said the same thing with the aggregation, right? We found out we don't need to do an RFP for that. We don't have to go out and, like, we were talking to one company, we were happy with them. We did some background work, background checking with them, and like that's what we're gonna go with. So I get that, the expediency part of that, and like the need to do that. But that's also a $0 sort of thing for the city. So it's just kind of like, it would be nice to be able to talk a little bit more about it and just sort of get into it a little bit more if possible.
Oh yeah, and I meant to, I'm sorry that I never responded to your email asking about Jeff coming. He wasn't available tonight, but he wanted to come, but he wasn't able to get some stuff.
What does he think about hiring this company?
He's all for it.
Okay, and what do you think his priorities are as far as what does he want to get out of this, do you think?
It's exactly aligned with what I said earlier, but
Okay.
basically that there's been a climate emergency resolution. People seem to want us to get on this and just get started. Like, let's do it. It's been a long time. We've kind of you kind of mentioned, people are it's a thing that's happening all across the state. People are trying to get serious about this. Money's coming down from the federal government and likely from the state.
And he feels like he has enough information about this company to feel good about hiring them.
I mean, not to want to speak for him, but I feel confident that that is the case.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
based off of our discussions. And,
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, I'm not
Let me
asking
just,
you.
I will
no,
say that
that's-
I will
yeah.
stand aside on this and say, not that I have any authority, but I mean, as someone who's emphasizing this and expressing a lot of concern about it, you guys have been around, the work that's been done, you wrote the scope, you understand what needs to come out of this consultant to accomplish what we want to accomplish. If you have confidence in it, I just satisfy myself that I saw a possible problem here and I'm raising it and
Yeah.
going on
Advisory
record
committee.
as it.
Right,
You're advising.
yeah,
Yes,
totally.
you're advising. Advisory
And-
committee.
and-
That's
and
what
I-
you're supposed to
and
do.
I- And I
Yeah.
won't make any, I won't push it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
That's
I
all.
I mean,
appreciate
it would
I
be
do.
interesting to know whether or not they have done this, what we're asking for any other cities with these new people they brought on in 2018. Like,
Yeah, if
how
you
have
look
they
at the
used?
qualification document, there's some stuff in there right there about, from Chelmsford and a few other places, things that they've done. They're a little
Okay.
broader, for sure. that are-
I do have a
but-
question about this though, because did we decide that we didn't want them to actually develop a quote residence guide?
We do want them to develop a residence guide, but we did not box in what that would be constituted
Okay,
of.
because I just,
Only the
and they
content.
understand that.
They
Because
understand
I-
that the content needs to be a guide for people, the residents to implement these things. But they also understand they need to get creative and figure out
Okay.
what is the best.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because, one of the things that I was thinking about in terms of an argument to have somebody coordinate this is that, they could help us develop a really great website that people
Yeah.
can go to. But
Yes.
that has to be updated constantly,
Exactly right.
all the time.
Right, and we were talking about last time, there's risk of like reinventing the wheel of a lot of this stuff, right? Like, and I think that's what you were talking about at the beginning. It's like moving away, like identifying where the needs are, like
Yeah.
what synthesizing all the stuff that's been done, resources that are out there, and like using all that.
Mhm.
And again, that's a big job too, though, to really make that assessment, like what's already available. How can we take that? How can we either
Yes.
not just repackage it necessarily, but like make it our own, make it useful,
Totally.
or do we need to? Or is that even what's needed? Or do we just need to utilize the existing resources and just have, the pathways to be able to
Connect
get
people
there?
better to
Yeah,
them,
connect
yeah.
people to them.
Better, yeah.
So I think that's part of it. So, I can certainly reach out to Jeff and like have a quick separate conversation with him about too. I mean, I actually saw him briefly at school pickup yesterday. I was like going to try to grab him. I had to run out of there. I didn't have a chance.
I was gonna say, I was surprised he didn't grab you. I feel like he's always telling me, like, oh, I saw Boba at the grocery store.
Yeah.
You're so silly.
Yeah, so I can certainly have a conversation with him. And again, advisory in nature. I think with some of the history with this committee, it can feel a little bit sort of like stuff happens and then we're told that, it's brought to us kind of after the fact. And it's at a chance a point when the chance to influence things is kind of gone.
Well, and
Right, and that's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
trying to mitigate here. And I know
I
that we've had a
appreciate
chance to talk about the RFP before it went out and all that and like,
So just help me, because I'm
So
taking
that's
these
just kind of
these
the
notes. What exactly are our concerns right now, this committee?
I mean, I've written some of them down. You're concerned about the specified experience of Weston and Sampson. You're concerned about the details of how they're going to achieve the deliverables. You're
Right.
concerned about, let's see, you'd like there to be some kind of presentation potentially for the EAC, something for them
Not
to
just
come.
for us, for the city.
For
and
other-
we participate, listen in, and if anybody wants to know, give us our reaction.
Right.
And yeah, that's like my main summary of it.
Yeah.
That's the last one being, is, given the scope of this and it needing to be sort of an umbrella action plan for the city, is $150,000 enough to create something?
Right.
We haven't called that out explicitly, but I think that's kind of a bit of the backdrop in my mind. Like, all these other things that have been created, how much money went into creating the municipal vulnerability plan and, stormwater management and all those things, like, all those things, definitely, more than $150,000 combined. This is meant to sort of tie all those together. Is that really enough to do what we want it to do?
Did they have any thoughts about that?
So that in there, they were, I told them that it needs to be this amount, and they were like, we can meet it, but
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and but that amount kind of came from them to begin
And it
with,
came
right?
from
They
them,
were the
yes,
ones who
yes.
told us $150,000
Yeah.
to do this. And again, I'm sure that's based on experience and based on what they've done in the past, and they have an idea, and then able to come up with that money from a couple different places that's already in place, which is great to have that there.
Actually, the purpose of this project is to inform the city on its fossil fuel usage and determine how it can achieve. It's not just the city, capital C, it's the entire,
Yes.
but that's not what this says. I mean,
But as you dig in, their proposal. That's what their feedback, what we said in the beginning of our proposal.
Well, that's I do think that's a little flimsy for like
because
the
what
amount of stuff for
we
a
want
10
information
page.
about the entire
City.
city.
Yeah,
Thing.
all the different
Because we
types of
actually
fences.
have a lot of information about the city.
Absolutely right.
I mean, they've gone out of their way to get that information, but we,
You're assuming that they mean the
City the way
official
that we
government of the
see it.
city.
well, when you
or-
say capital C city, that's usually what it means.
Okay,
I don't know, maybe
get
that's
lost
not what
on
they
that
meant,
stuff.
maybe that's not what they meant, I'm just,
I mean, they couldn't possibly be making that mistake after reading this RFP that talks about every other sector, residential, commercial.
right,
all
and
those.
that may
say
just
that.
have been, they were trying to get this back to you,
I am seeing 2 or 3 people, I mean interrupt.
what?
Are you done? I'm
Yes,
gonna
I'm sorry,
interrupt you.
yes, I'm
Okay.
absolutely done, yes.
There's 2 or 3 people on here now that I'm seeing who have backgrounds in building energy,
Mhm.
somebody worked with wastewater treatment plant, so the question is, you get them on your project, or you get them on your project, or they're definitely available as expertise for the people who are on the project, kind of thing, that's,
Right.
so.
But
There's
haven't
some
we
hope
already-
here in what I'm seeing.
Haven't we already gotten a whole study about our wastewater and our treatment plant and all that? Isn't that one of the things the city has already like gotten
Honeywell, the
grants?
Honeywell one.
No, but I thought there was actually, let me look at the long list we put together.
I mean, there's a homeowner's guide to stormwater management. There's
No, but I thought that the city had, because they were, like, that's why they fixed that that section where they, in what's part of Easthampton? Is that
Cherry Hill you talking about?
The,
Cherry
Stormwater.
Street.
yeah,
Cherry
isn't that,
Park
wasn't
Street
that
Board,
part of,
Stormwater.
That would be a part of the green infrastructure master plan.
Yeah.
Identified that as a project, and then we've been doing it through the MPP grant, so it's probably already identified.
yeah, that we have a citywide, a 2019 citywide stormwater management plan, and, because I think that's why I'm not sure that we need them to look at I think that the city, because actually we were kind of in crisis about that, has already done studies and made plans for dealing with water here. Isn't that right? Am I right about that?
I think that you are. I think so. That came up to you because he mentioned that one of the people on the
Yeah.
team
Yes.
has experience.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we.
And I'm not saying that we're gonna have this person come in, but I'm do work on wastewater, but the fact is that they have some expertise to evaluate the energy issues at a wastewater treatment plant suggests to me that they know a lot about pumps and filtration systems and equipment and
Right,
energy implications.
right.
So they have some expertise in that can be applied to other things. And there's another person who did work on a net zero complex in Brooklyn and how they were going to implement that. I mean, so there's some people there.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, John, they know a lot more about it than I do.
And maybe
That's not germane. We would expect that, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah.
only up till now.
Otherwise, we could.
You still have a
Otherwise,
chance.
we could get $150,000.
Still have a chance to surpass it.
So what do we want to do for, at this
Well, I would
point?
just say, I mean, if possible, I mean, again, as a request, I would like a chance to do what John says. If there could be some sort of public thing, I would like to see something a little more fleshed out than this. I mean, this takes us through February 2024, which still leaves 10 months
Like, do
runway
the compact,
till the grant needs to be, or the money needs to be satisfied or
And
spent.
I just want to reiterate, things can get complicated in situations like this if you start having public forums.
This isn't a
without
public
having everything
forum,
in
and they have to
place.
do public meetings as part of this, but
Yes.
we're not talking about a public forum, we're talking about a stakeholder meeting for people
Well,
within
even
the city.
deciding who the stakeholders are, I don't know
That's
enough
up to the
about.
mayor.
I don't know, well,
Let him
That's
know
really
it's up
what
to
I'm
Jeff.
saying, that's what I'm saying, because
Jeff,
I don't know
too,
enough
so-
about the stakeholders to know whether there are people who aren't on board with this even. So I think we just need to let the Jeff and the mayor decide who and if a meeting like that would be useful.
Well, they would always
Well,
have the
yeah.
final say on that.
I mean, we
we're
certainly
not-
aren't
Yeah.
calling the meeting. You know that we don't have the
Yeah.
power to do that.
Yeah.
No one's saying that. We're just suggesting that something like that would be a good idea. If the mayor agrees and the planning department and maybe the city council agree to that, then we have representatives from different stakeholders
Yeah.
to hear our presentation.
Again, I just think, for something that's meant, again, to be this maybe kind of unifying document that's touching on a lot of different departments within the city, and that's touching on a lot of different areas of government and residents and businesses and everything else, I don't think there's harm in the lead up to that, like making sure that all those people have a seat at the table to sort of get these ideas in front of the people who are going to be doing the work, right? And make sure that they understand from the perspective of the different people within city government, elected and non-elected, that that all those things are
So
being
who is
taken
going
into
to-
consideration.
Who's going to take this on and move forward with this?
I was planning to give Jeff an overview of everything tonight. That happens tonight. So
Yeah.
and
Okay,
obviously,
perfect,
if
okay.
anyone else wants to reach out,
Yeah, then I'm happy.
okay, that
I'll
sounds
let
good.
you do that, and then
Okay.
if Jeff wants to reach out to me, or I can reach out to him next week,
Okay,
and maybe he and I can have a quick conversation.
sure.
I don't know, as of right now, what was the thinking within the planning department, or the thing about accepting or getting a signature on things? Was that like the next step in the process?
I think it was. Yeah, I mean, we've got the proposal, so now the next step is feeling like, do we give them comments back on the proposal? That's what I wanted to get from
Right.
you guys here tonight, which I appreciate, and then figure it out, because that's the next step. Procedurally, would be to sign the proposal, whatever the
Yeah.
final form of that would be, and then they would conceivably get started in February. So.
Well, I would like them to
Longer road.
clarify that that it's more than just the city's
I appreciate
energy.
that.
Because
Yeah.
That's
That's not-
absolutely wildly important. That
Yeah.
it's not just
Yeah.
the city.
and you're probably
city
right
alone.
that that's
Yeah.
not what they
Yeah.
intended to
No,
do.
but it's
if it was just the city, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but if it was just the cities, then there wouldn't be a point in a
Right.
public education section particularly
Right.
there.
Right. And a homeowner or
Yeah.
a resident's
Right.
guide.
Right.
And that's even
and all that.
that's not the document that they have to adhere to anyway. This is the document. Is that how it works?
Well, there'll be a contract drawn up as far as I understand
Okay.
it.
Usually you attach the
Okay.
request for proposal to the contract and reference it to.
Okay. Yes, so they'll all get clarified at that point, so there's no point in
Yeah.
making them.
Well, but it'd be nice to know
Work on
that,
that.
that everyone's on the same page about
Yeah.
it and that it's right. So
This also might have the benefit of smoothing the path and getting buy-in from some of the departments. Maybe you already have it, because I'm all green and new to Easthampton, relatively speaking. And, as a planning department, I'm sure you work with all these people to begin with. And maybe they're already on board and don't feel a need to. But it seems like it couldn't hurt to give them a chance, knowing that there's going to be people coming in and examining their operations and proposing changes and expenses and new ways of doing things before the contract's signed, to have them say, we just want to see how your reaction to these people before we were thinking of bringing them on. And really
Right.
kind of to Weston and Sampson, it's yours to lose. You don't have to, you're not competing here, but it's yours to lose. Meet the people you're gonna you're gonna be working with and evaluating their departments and all that, and give them a chance to feel like that they've been in on it from the very beginning almost. That's a thought.
All right, well,
Thank you.
No, yeah, well, just last thing I want
Yeah,
to
go
say,
ahead.
because you had made that point about, sometimes it feels like that context you gave, like, I don't want you guys to feel like you're not involved or that it doesn't matter or that, like, you haven't been able to say, like, it's really important to me.
No, I feel
And-
like you've really
Well, I've really
given us a
relied on
lot
you guys
of
to, like,
opportunity.
yeah, I appreciate that, but I've relied on you guys to help me make this final thing, and I really appreciate it. And it just needs to be said that, like, you guys are instrumental, and it's really important, and you're going to be involved throughout it. Like, I don't want you to feel like you're not being heard or
Right.
considered, or it's
Thank
really
you.
important.
Thank
We feel like you were listening and
yeah.
and giving us opportunities. I think he's referring to some old history that predates me or you or this
Well,
committee.
right, it certainly, and predates me as well,
Yeah.
right, with stuff, it's like, but that's just, I mean, I think, sometimes it feels like stuff has like bypassed us, and again, not you specifically,
Okay,
not the planning department necessarily, because we've always had a good relationship with that.
okay,
So, just making sure that we we are getting a chance to review and discuss among ourselves and like have that influence or advise what's going on. All right, so we'll let you talk to Jeff.
Yeah.
Again, I'm happy to talk to him. If it gets to the point where it does, the opportunity for us to get back together before our next meeting
Yeah.
in March, like we can certainly.
I mean,
do that.
I would love to sit down with them and talk to them, but I'm just not sure that. I think the mayor and Jeff should decide what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm willing to put together another, meeting of the committee if they would need to come to something official, or if it's going to be something more informal.
okay,
We can. I'm flexible to what that looks like
okay.
potentially. If again, and I defer to Jeff too, because I know he does great work, and the planning department is really on top of a lot of things, and they have an impeccable track record. So, not about any doubt or anything like that.
Okay.
Just diligence.
Sure, absolutely.
Do you mind if I make a copy of it this way?
You can, I emailed it to her, I
That
can
one,
email it
we got
again.
this.
You- oh,
Yeah, remember,
oh,
that's what we were
I
looking
can
at.
send
much
you,
better.
you can take
Even
that
though
one.
I don't have a printer even.
You can take this one, because I just printed
you
it for
sure?
this meeting, so take
You
it,
sure?
take it, yes, please.
Chair,
Okay, no, I've got a
Okay.
digital copy.
I'm
Yeah.
like in complete electronic hell right now, and everything's done through my phone. So
Yeah.
until I buy a new computer, so
Take it.
Well,
Been there. Nightmare.
printer is not working with my computer.
and I don't want to short circuit it too much, but I do
You
need
gotta
to,
go,
I
yes.
do need to wrap up
Oh,
in a
yeah.
moment. So if there,
Well, I should tell you that about 3 months ago, I ran into Connie Denham and Homar at an event, and I hit them up about idling. And they
yeah.
said, "Oh yeah, and that sounds really interesting." And they finally got back to me last week, and
Okay.
I met with them, and they're wonderful. I mean, they're just so willing to talk about anything. But they're on board about idling. They get it. Homar said that he wasn't sure that he wanted to talk to the police at this point. I told him that, in my opinion, if we don't have the police engaged the way they were in Wellesley, I sent you guys that, so I don't know if you remember, but the chief of police in Wellesley actually agreed to have his people ticket offenders. The
Mhm.
fine was much less than what the state requires, but he said that he thought that we should first talk to the health board and see how they might like to get involved in this. So I thought that actually sounded really good. So he's going to set up a meeting with me and Connie and him. I mean, you guys are welcome to come, but
Nice.
to discuss it further. So that is moving along. And then the other thing is, while I had their ear, I talked to them about the what's called the specialized new stretch codes, which
Yeah.
will actually come into effect next summer. I think it's Brookline and what was the other town? Brookline and some other town have had town meetings this past week and passed the new stretch codes. They're not actually totally net zero because at the last minute, the fossil fuel industry managed to get this weird thing in there, where they can still have some gas coming into the buildings. I don't understand it, But anyway, I told them that, I really felt that it was important for the city to pass, to support the new standardized stretch codes, given the fact that they just had this resolution that we are in a climate crisis. So they didn't know anything about it. I've sent them some more information about the stretch codes themselves, but we're about to have some rather major construction happening in Easthampton, like the one over by Tasty Top. I asked them, do they, what's the plan for the energy in that building? And they didn't know, which is fine. I mean, they can't be in charge of everything, but it seems to me that that should be a net zero building, in my personal opinion.
It's gonna be a lot of buildings.
But that's going to be a huge building.
It's huge.
You
The biggest, the main one, but
yeah.
there's all those apartment buildings.
I mean, maybe
as well.
they could do geothermal over there. I don't know, but the only way that can happen is if the city, chooses to opt into these new stretch codes. So, and it has to happen really soon. So, but it was a good discussion, but I think that, and I told them that I would be willing to, do a presentation to the city council, and anyone who wants to do it with me would be welcome to help me about it, if
that'd
at
be
some
great.
point, because I think it's really important. I think.
What would be the process for getting that on the agenda?
I think just getting one of the city councilors to agree to put it on the agenda. I don't think it's, but I want to talk to them a little bit more, because I want some of the people that I know on the city council to know about it a little bit before I do a presentation.
Okay.
And then I think it's just a
Fully
question of
support
voting to opt in. I don't think there's anything more than that, because we're already a green community. So every green community has to opt into the new stretch codes, so they're going to use them.
Maybe interesting to talk to. Oh,
I don't know. I don't think there is a deadline,
Your
but
next grant contingent, your next green community grant contingent on that.
no, that's why it's opt-in. It used to be that up until this time, in order to be a green community, you had to use what they called the stretch codes.
Right.
But now they have made the regular codes more stringent, but green communities have to opt in to these what they call specialized stretch codes, which are really almost net zero.
But have to opt in sounds contradictory in and of itself.
In order for them to be the required code, the city has to say, yes, this green community is going to use the specialized code. Before they had to, now they have to decide to. They exist, but they don't have to use them if they don't want to.
Don't have to, but if you want to have the designation as a green community.
No, you don't.
Not anymore. You
That
said
used to be
before.
the case.
Right.
That used to be the case, but no longer.
Okay.
It could be interesting to talk to the building department about this. 'Cause
Building
Yeah.
and planning.
Yeah,
Between
and then
you guys, let us
I
know what's happening with this
It's
project.
primarily, well, certainly it's going through the permitting process now. Meet on Monday, the Conservation Commission is meeting about it.
Yeah.
I believe February 7th or 1st or something is when the planning board meeting is continued. It's gonna be a long one.
So wait, so
Yeah.
who should I talk to about who is the planning board? Who should I talk to about it?
The project, well, if
Yeah,
you
go.
specifically have Tasty Talk questions, I can talk to you at the end of the meeting to
Okay.
know about that, because that's gonna be a lot, and if we're trying to get through the other stuff, but I'm happy to talk to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Is the chair of that still the same?
Jesse,
Is it still Jesse?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
that's my understanding.
Yeah. Do you have any other updates on the green community?
Oh, I
side of
do.
things?
I actually
Okay.
just today got an email. So it's the regional coordinator was Mark Levinsky, if you're familiar. He moved up or did something exciting for his career,
Right.
and it's Chris Mason, who you connected with.
with.
He's the new Mark Grabinski. He's the new regional coordinator for Green
Cool.
Communities. So he's an
I
awesome
knew he
guy.
left, but I didn't know that's where he went to.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him because it's a cool position and he's a great guy. So he sent me today an email with comments about the report that I sent in most recently, our last fiscal year report. And it was mainly about the oil deliveries, oil usage. I just got it today, so I got to get the details and figure it out what is missing. But it should be something as simple as finding what's missing, putting it.
Oh, this is your data report?
Yes,
Okay.
the annual
Right,
report.
right.
Yes, not the grant or
Okay,
anything like
right.
that. The grant is moving along just fine. We've received the Teslas, but
Oh, you
now
have? Oh,
yes, but they're not on the road yet because they haven't been kitted out with the police stuff. I don't know if they're painted on the outside, the police decals, but it
Right.
doesn't have like the lights and the computer inside. You know what I'm talking about, like all
Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah,
Oh,
right.
They're working on that.
Stuff that doesn't normally come with a Tesla.
Exactly.
Or any vehicle.
Exactly. So they need to get that up in there, and then I'm gonna do the training for using them, developing that now, and then we'll probably be ready for the final report and close it out, because it's not
Cool.
super complicated to close out.
That's
Either
so
have
cool.
or we don't, so.
So you're gonna do the training?
Yeah, I'm learning about it now and researching and trying to develop it all together. I know I've never even driven a Tesla, so. But my concern is just having something that, so that it's more the information piece of it, like they all know how to drive a car. It's more the
Right.
information piece of it, so that if residents ask about it, they can speak to the amount of gas that's being saved or why it's important.
And there's nothing to do with Elon Musk.
I know, oh my God. Don't even get me started. So,
Not
yeah.
in this meeting.
Yeah, no way. Oh Lord, yeah. We'll go ahead. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it. Just a quick version of it. Hopefully I'll have way more for next meeting,
Okay.
once I dig into what the comments.
All right, and then yeah, at that point, then we can start to more seriously consider
The next group.
next round
Yes.
what that might want to be.
Mhm.
Maybe it's well, idling might be a little tough to quantify.
It's interesting. I mean, I'd like it to be included in the climate action plan.
Right.
Stuff about idling, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Stretch codes too. I saw some mention of stretch codes in their qualifications there, like that. So that's definitely something that would want to be part of this too.
Okay.
And like, yeah, whatever other building, codes and things like that that we would do for like net zero or for more geothermal or ground source or anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable requirement at this point for construction.
Yeah,
I'd
right.
like to know
Because
more about
if-
it actually, because
if-
all these things have costs and who, does it affect whether the building gets built or not, whether the jobs, come through or
True.
not, whether,
It's always
does it put up obstacles to new, low-income housing in the town? I mean, I
Yeah.
hopefully not, and hopefully people are willing to pay those
Well,
costs, but we have to answer those questions
Yeah,
to
my
the public.
understanding is that I mean, from what I've read, and I'm certainly once again not an expert, but there is a minimal extra cost to building this way, but the maintenance and like in terms of energy, like keeping the buildings going, it saves huge amounts of money.
Right.
So and there's not as big a differential as there was even several years ago.
It's always the case, right? Costs come down.
Yeah.
Efficiencies are gained, and it's just a matter of, but the person
Yeah.
footing the bill up front always wants the lowest dollar value on it. They don't care
Yeah.
about the maintenance and operation, because if it's not their ability to own and operate,
Right.
like that's always the thing.
But that's
then
why
there's-
you have to have laws.
right. That's what, right. But it's there's cost to that, but maybe there's also opportunities to educate, to actually provide job,
Yeah.
training and skills and things like that. There's always other ways. Like, you got to look at it hopefully from a holistic standpoint, and not just this, we're going to make this onerous, like, extra cost thing that's going to mean that, developer B over here is going to just go take it across the border, where somebody's not going to make them do that.
Well, right, and that's why it's, we want every city in town to adopt these codes, so that doesn't happen. But, so I actually wanted to say something about the buses. Do you have any updates that you want to?
No, I saw the thing you sent me, which is an interesting data set about, which I'll get into, looking into more later, but nothing really other than they had answers on grant proposals. The Northampton should have gotten their answer from the federal government on their application at this point. I was going to just simply say on that topic that, given what I heard from Marin at the last meeting about don't bring this to the school committee.
No, he didn't say don't go
Well,
to the school committee.
Well, I had a conversation with him in the hallway before the meeting started. Okay, before the meeting started.
Okay.
And he said, "There's no money. We got no money." And then I said, "Well, you don't have to fund the buses yourself." And then he started saying, "Okay, well maybe if there's an option where we don't have to put up the capital for the buses, we make the vendor do it." Yeah, he softened on that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the environment, what I'm getting at is, I don't want to be acting as a lone wolf here, going around. I think I would like to have a discussion at some point about the state of the situation with buses and the technology and the costs and whatever, and get a vote of the committee to say, we think this is a priority and it's a committee priority, and so we can go to the mayor, we can go to the city council and say, this is not just John Pepe speaking, this is something
Right.
Yeah, but
We
I
agree.
also think that what I got from what Marin said in the meeting was that the real way to approach this is to get other cities and towns in the area together with us to
Right.
pressure the company that provides the buses to provide electric buses.
Right,
That, I mean,
right.
that's what really needs to happen. And what I wanted to say
Right.
about that was that another argument for this is the studies that have been done about the effect on children in school buses breathing in all of those fumes.
Mhm.
That many buses are not maintained well enough so that the fumes don't come into the buses. If the windows are open, and the other thing is, a lot of times buses caravan, and a lot of extra fumes go into the buses that way, and of course the idling the
Caravan
buses do.
meaning lining up next to each other at the
And
pickup
traveling
points.
that way too,
Yes,
yes,
traveling.
yeah, so, but I mean, there's a lot, I think that's like over and above the overall environment, I think that's a compelling argument for any parent to not want their kids riding around
Right.
these buses, because some kids, depending on where they live, they're on those buses for a long time.
Yeah, my bus ride was an hour.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
breathing in those fumes.
So,
So,
I
anyway,
think
I just wanted to say that.
It could rise to the level of like, maybe we can get a resolution at the city council level, or I don't know if the school committee can pass like resolutions or something like that, but even just like, something that might be a first step, along the lines of like a climate sort of thing, like, we think this is important, and, it's not binding in any way, but we think that,
But
this is what
even
they just think.
before we go there, we have to have our own
Yeah.
choice that we all agree, or a majority agrees that this is important enough in the scheme of things and other things we are doing to make it a project.
Absolutely.
And then maybe I would, work on preparing a presentation or getting help to prepare a presentation for the city council or school committee. But even before knowing that, we have 8,000 things on our agenda, and slight exaggeration,
Yeah.
7,999, whatever.
We'll like to tighten it up.
It's not a fault. It's just that in terms of what we can do and how we lay out, or divvy up tasks or whatever, we have to be some realistic about
For sure.
which ones. And so
Yep,
I just
and
want
I
to talk
think-
about it more before I take
Yeah.
the next step. Plus, I've been preoccupied with this.
Yeah, well, this is a good thing to,
Does
this is
anyone know
more
whether the
pressing.
Pioneer Valley, not the Transit Authority, but there's like an organization.
Planning Association, Planning Commission.
Would they be involved, like if we did want to get in touch with other communities? I wonder whether that would be a way to do that. I don't know whether that's
There's a
true.
Pioneer Valley Clean Energy Plan by the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Yeah. Do they have an area about transportation in there?
They what?
Do they
Yeah,
have a
they cover
section
it
about
all.
transportation?
They cover it all.
Do they say anything
I can't-
about buses, school buses in that?
I haven't looked at it in a few months.
That
so
would
I
be
can't
interesting,
cite it.
because I don't know anything about that organization, but that might be a good way to try to get in touch with the surrounding communities
Yeah,
through them.
I'm sure it
Yeah.
would.
Well, I think,
Sure,
yeah, so everything helps when we can put like concrete steps on it, right? Concrete next actions. So next time, I think maybe this will be a little more settled, right? We won't be in the throes of like discussing this because it'll be,
For March.
yeah. And so we can focus a little more on like what are some of the concrete next things
Yeah.
that we're going to do
Yeah,
with idling stretch codes, school bus electrification. I think those are good
I can come in with a
pieces, and then maybe aggregation.
brief summary of opportunities and barriers and whatever around electric school buses and strategies, and we
Yeah.
can see if we can. That's enough to make a group decision about just something worth.
I think we need
Pushing
to
and-
make a group decision about how we want to approach it too. There are a lot of different possible ways to approach it. That
Yep.
the-
Potentially, the climate action can help do that.
Right.
Because that could be an action.
Yeah.
Stop.
Absolutely.
Not have
That
get
would
electric
definitely
buses.
be-
What's the path to do that?
Definitely be something
One
I
of the
want to see
actions.
in there for sure.
And
Yeah.
hopefully the other items that are listed on the agenda.
Well, surely
would
they'll
be-
address transportation.
I would think absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so we have, as usual, we have some framework for things, but we need to flesh it out and actually get a couple of concrete, again, let's do next step, and then let's just
Okay.
try to keep it moving.
Do you guys want me to
Totally have
prepare something
support
about the
for
stretch code for you for the next meeting?
That'd be
Just-
great.
Not,
Okay.
I will, I can't go over each of the codes, but I can give you the big picture about the codes.
Big picture's
Yeah,
great.
talk to the what is her title? The woman in the building department, BJ. She is like our building code enforcer. She's like the building commissioner, excuse me.
Okay,
Wicked
what's,
serious
now what, well, I thought,
Yeah, I'll talk to you.
yeah, I do need to wrap up here. So
Okay.
nothing else pressing. Then
I move we adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And what time is it?
7:20.
20.